What if I told you that you could reach out with your actual hands and flip every switch, turn every knob, and grab every lever in your VR cockpit? No controllers, no fumbling, just your hands. And no, we're not talking about hand tracking. We're talking about the UDCAP VR gloves from UDCS World. And as someone who has spent an embarrassing amount of money trying to make my VR setup more immersive, yeah, I was always gonna buy these. Let's find out if they're worth it. All right. Let's talk about the unboxing. First thing, the packaging feels premium, like genuinely premium. This feels like you're opening something futuristic. And if you've been on this channel for a while, you know that MartydudeVR loves a good unboxing. There's also a ridiculous amount of stuff in this package. You get the gloves themselves, wireless USB dongles, charging cables, the joystick and button modules that snap on, mounting bases, adapters, and even these little hand sleeves that go under the gloves to make them easier to put on. And I'm sure they pretty much help with hygiene too. I literally kept pulling things out of the box like it was a clown car. Every time I thought I was done, there was a little bag or accessory that came with it. I must say though that the gloves, when I first pulled them out, I thought something was missing. Like, these gloves are thin, like very thin, and I'm surprised they even have as much tech as they do packed into them. Like, sheesh, like this is genuinely a crazy piece of technology. Now for the joystick modules, the build quality is actually really good. The joystick has a nice click to it, the buttons feel responsive, and the snap-on attachment to the gloves is really secure. I personally like a more premium joystick module, especially for the price. That extrudes a little bit more so it's easier to get to. But you know, it's whatever, it gets the job done. All right, now that we know what's in the box, let's talk about the gloves themselves. The UDCAP gloves are designed to replace your controllers in SteamVR. But what makes them different from other VR controllers we've seen over the years is how thin and lightweight they are. We're talking 45 grams per glove. They're made from this lycra blend fabric with ultra thin sensors. Like, when I'm talking thin, they are very thin. You literally don't feel them when you put the glove on. All it feels like is you're wearing like a really, really thin pair of gloves. And honestly, it's kind of nuts. And these sensors are so small and fragile, they literally tell you to put the gloves on carefully so you don't damage them, removing the glove and putting it back on. Each glove packs 12 sensors that track all 15 finger joints across 21 joint angles. So every little finger movement, every bend, every curl, every spread is being captured and sent to SteamVR in real time. Now let's talk setup, because I know a lot of you guys are wondering about it. It's pretty simple. You plug in the USB wireless dongles, one for the gloves and whichever ones you need for the trackers you're using. Fire up the UDCAP driver software, hold the power button on, and basically pair it to the PC, and then boom, you're connected. Now here's the part that requires some patience, which is calibration. Your first calibration session is going to be a little confusing for a lot of you guys, depending on how you have to set this up, or your VR headset you have, or whatever setup you're going for. The most annoying part to me is getting your Vive trackers or whatever tracker you choose to be recognized and positioned correctly in SteamVR. Once all that is sorted out though, you move on to the glove calibration itself, which is just fist clenches, finger spreads, and following on-screen prompts. Let's take the gloves to your hand movement. Really simple. Now, I must say, you will look absolutely unhinged and a little weird doing this. And if anyone walks in on you while you're doing it, then just know there's no normal way to explain it. After that initial session, though, recalibrations are faster, and you want to recalibrate roughly every hour or so, just for the best accuracy. Not a deal breaker to me personally, but it's definitely worth knowing going in. And you also want to recalibrate the joystick direction separately, because finger bending can throw the joystick angle off slightly, and it can be like inverted and stuff like that. But the software will walk you through it. There's also manuals on UDC's site to help you out. Something I should also mention that you are not required to buy, trackers to use these. You can also mount your Quest controllers on the back of the VR glove, but it might feel a little awkward with the weight. One more thing on setup. These work with basically any SteamVR compatible headset. So MetaQuest, Vive, Valve Index, Pimax, Pico, Bigscreen. If it streams or uses SteamVR, you're good. Now, if you're on a standalone headset, but you still want to use lighthouse trackers like I do with the Samsung Galaxy XR, you're going to need Space Calibrator, which is an app on Steam. This basically is going to align the tracking space between your headset and the SteamVR trackers on the glove so everything lines up properly. Now, it's not too hard. You have to do like some figure eights with your hands, but you run through the calibration once and you basically know the process after that. But it is an extra step worth knowing about if you're not on a lighthouse native, VR headset. Luckily though, UDCS World has accounted for this, and they have guys on their site to walk you through that whole process. Can be a little confusing at first, but it's easy once you get down. All right, before we get into the flight sim talk, quick shout out to today's sponsor, Into the AM. If you see me in a lot of my recent videos, you probably notice I'm rocking one of their t-shirts. These are hand down my favorite t-shirts right now. They're made from super soft polycotton blend that's lightweight, breathable, and actually fits well without being too tight or too baggy. I wear these for filming, for long VR sessions, VR treadmilling, and honestly just everyday stuff. They're that comfortable. They've got a huge range of graphic tees if you want something with personality, and they also have clean basics if you want to wear just like everyday stylish t-shirt. Sizes go up to 4XL, and they're always running sales, so the prices are hard to beat for the quality you're getting. I'll drop a link in the description, go check them out. All right, back to the gloves. Okay, here's the part you actually came for. How do these feel in a flight sim? I tested these with two of my favorite flight sims as of right now, which is VTOL VR and DCS World. VTOL VR is the obvious one to start with because the whole game was built around VR and hand-based cockpit interactions. And with the UDCAP gloves, it's actually incredible. With standard VR controllers, interacting with the cockpit always felt like you're just poking at things with a stick. It works fine. It gets the job done, but could definitely be better. With these gloves though, you're reaching out with your actual fingers. Flipping a switch feels like flipping an actual switch. Grabbing the throttle feels way more natural. It's just a extra layer of immersion that flight simmers have been asking for years. Now, personally, I originally bought these for shooters and adventure games, but I find myself using them more for simming more than anything. And I'll actually go over how they perform for shooters in another video, so definitely subscribe so you can see that video. But I actually gave VTOL VR a real chance. I actually tried to play it before, but I felt like a dummy during the tutorial because starting the jet was pretty difficult and I kind of gave up. After re-upping on willpower and really committing to it, VTOL VR is amazing. It's just a really fun flight sim. Being able to interact with your hands that are remembering 20 different HOTUS bindings is actually just really nice. In the B-roll, you'll see me enjoying the view in the Samsung Galaxy XR, which I'll also link below. And it's just nice to be able to enjoy a experience that felt familiar, just in a whole new way. The only gripe that I can think of kind of remotely would be that sometimes when you grip, sometimes the controller doesn't want to let go. But you can get around that by just shaking your hand a little bit and then it'll let it go. So it's not a perfect solution, but it works. Now, some people will ask, what about hand tracking? I mean, if you have a Quest 3 or any headset that supports it, and my answer is, sure, you can do that. But hand tracking is not as consistent at different angles compared to VR gloves. And that's just my opinion on it, because I also thought about the same thing. Like, you use hand tracking, but no, hand tracking is just not as consistent in terms of holding, and especially at different view angles. So I would recommend VR gloves over hand tracking any day. Now let's talk about DCS World, and this is where it gets really interesting. I didn't even know DCS World supported any kind of hand tracked input. Now, just like with VTOL VR, I tried DCS World eons ago and got really overwhelmed. But this time I gave this monstrous flight sim another chance, and man, it is fun when you actually get eased into the experience. I took like an hour to set up my HOTUS, and I even bought the Flaming Cliff packs. You know, there's a ton of DLC for this game, by the way. And I've actually been learning how to fly planes properly for the first time. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is difficult. This is a very difficult flight sim, very realistic, like genuinely humbling, but doing it with VR gloves does add a new layer where you feel like you're actually in the cockpit, reaching for things. It makes the learning process a lot more engaging, even when you're kind of destroying your plane with your own incompetence. What's also nice about wearing these with DCS World is that you can easily switch between a HOTUS and a throttle whenever you really need to, while still wearing the VR gloves. Literally, all you have to do is kind of move your hand over. You can press a button on your HOTUS or throttle, depending on which ones you have. And it's really just simple to switch between. And I have to say, and I've never said this on my channel before, but DCS World is a beautiful game. That really pushed it to the limits by 5090, but I gotta say, this one is a looker. It is beautiful. Now, these gloves do emulate index controllers and steamvr, so the fundamentals are there if you ever had a Valve Index controller. Now, your mileage may vary depending on the module that you pick through the hand interactions, and it can kind of change depending on which plane you use, how cockpit interaction is implemented. And another thing, the joystick and the buttons on the gloves are clutch too. Now, you can use these thumb joysticks for menu navigation or camera movement, and the AB buttons for confirmations. They're not completely relying on hand gestures and stuff for everything. It's genuinely just a nice hybrid of natural hands plus traditional inputs that make this very practical for daily use. Our next game is Aces of Thunder. So Aces of Thunder is a recent flight sim, and it is a goodie. So this is like a World War II, World War I style flight sim. And it is basically just like VTOL VR, where it's going to be used with VR controllers, which makes it also great to be used with the VR gloves. So flying at night, flying during the day, it is a very nice experience. There are some interactables that are inside the cockpit itself, but a lot of the gauges and stuff, as far as I've noticed, can't be manipulated, but you can roll down, like use the throttle and stuff like that, or roll up the canopy and stuff like that. So it's really, really, really like fun. And even twisting and turning the plane with the VR gloves is actually pretty intuitive. And I actually flew pretty nice. So I would say this is one of those ones where you can switch between a HOTUS and VR gloves, or just go full VR gloves and have a good experience. And if you're in the flight sim community, if you haven't heard of Aces of Thunder, you got to go check it out because it's from the people that made War Thunder. Now, comfort-wise, these feel perfect. At 45 grams, you really don't feel the weight of the gloves much at all in terms of like just base. And they're so breathable, they don't really make your hands sweat, especially during those long flight sim sessions. My only qualm, and I think really my biggest thing, is that the Vive Tracker 3.0s feel huge when I turn my hand. You can really feel the bulk on the back of your hand when you rotate your wrist. And it doesn't really break your illusion, but does add a little bit of extra weight to your hand. I definitely recommend going with smaller trackers like the Tundra trackers or the Vive Ultimate trackers if you can. I personally think it'll make the whole experience just a lot more seamless. And another thing that really impressed me is you can type on a keyboard or type on your phone with absolutely no problem. Like that's actually really nice. And cleaning these gloves are also very easy. Just follow the guide on UDCAP's real website and you're good. Obviously VR can get a little sweaty. It can be a little not clean hobby sometimes, but we all know this, but at least they make it very easy to deal with like sweaty hands and stuff like that. On the warranty side, you get 1 year on the hardware modules and 6 months on the fabric glove body. Now this will break down over time, just like with regular gloves. I mean, it is regular clothing, so be prepared for some wear and tear over time. All right, with all that being said, let's talk money. So MSRP is $699, but honestly, they're pretty much always on sale every time I see them for around $559. And you can get another 10% off with code MartyDude, links in the description. Now, if you do pick these up through my link, it helps support the channel, which I really appreciate. But you're looking at around $500 out of the door, which is very, decently priced for a niche VR accessory. So who is this for? I think if you're a dedicated PC VR flight simmer who's already invested in a quality headset, a HOTUS setup, even rudder pedals and all that stuff, at this point, your significant other probably has already stopped asking you how much these things cost. And I'm pretty sure you want that next level of cockpit immersion where you're physically interacting with switches and knobs using your real hands. So I think this is a serious worth of consideration for that crowd. Now, if you're more casual, just not into flight sim like that, I don't know if I would say it'd be worth the investment, but for the hardcore sim crowd, I definitely recommend it to you guys 9 times out of 10. And to summarize everything, guys, the UDCAP gloves are not perfect. They're not at all. But what they deliver when everything clicks is something really special. That feeling of just interacting with VR with your bare hands and actually having it work is the VR dream, man. I think for flight simmers, these can really get us closer to that immersion that we all want. Now, these are my impressions after about a month of consistently using them. I had them for months now, but I've been using these consistently for about a month. And I'll keep putting hours on these. I'll do a follow-up probably a few months from now, once I've really dialed in my setup across different sims. And if you guys want to know my setup and stuff like that, let me know in the comments. And if you have a flight sim me to test these in, let me know. If you like this review, found this helpful at all, smash the like button, subscribe, and remember, it's the dude with a VR headset. Peace.